The signal shouldn't have existed in the cold, dead heart of Sector 19 Kappa. Flickering human transmission pierced the vacuum of space like a ghost's last breath. It was the kind of thing every explorer dreams of discovering, and the kind of thing that should have been left buried. The Zelari survey vessel, Verect, wasn't looking for humans. The galaxy hadn't heard from Earth in centuries, not since the collapse. Some claimed humanity destroyed itself, others believed they'd gone silent by design. But when the Outpost's signal pulsed through, subspace coded in an ancient human frequency, the ship's commander, Directal, altered course immediately. The source, Neverostre, a frozen planet obscured by magnetic storms and eclipsed by a rogue gas giant. Sensors barely penetrated the crust, but the signal, it was insistent, precise, human. The team touched. Down in the planet's twilight, twin suns cast elongated shadows across frozen cliffs, and gale-force winds howled like banshees. Snow stung like glass. The Zelari drilled through 30 meters of permafrost before striking something unnatural, a massive alloy structure, ancient and blackened, like a submerged leviathan of metal. The hull bore human markings, faded flags, warning sigils, and one chilling phrase scorched across the entrance. AEG IS-09. Hold the line. The Zelri pried open the blast door. It groaned like a dying beast, releasing a hiss of ancient pressurized air sore with oxidized blood, scorched lubricant, and decay. What lay beyond the threshold was a frozen crypt. Inside, corridors branched. Like veins through a sprawling facility, ice coated everything. Human corpses, clad in battered Terran exosuits, lay slumped over terminals and curled beneath shattered bulkheads. Some had bullet wounds, others looked burned from the inside. Out, the silence was unbearable. In the command center, a flicker of movement jolted the team. A console sparked to life. A holographic interface blinked on, glitched and flickering. The voice that followed was distorted, broken into digital shards. Outpost Aegis 0, GGZ, ZZC, TTK, critical failure. Systems offline. Alert, containment, KZZK, TT-compromised. Do not proceed to Vault 7. Then the interface cut out. The team's lead xenologist, Kesrek Hun, leaned in. "What is Vault 7? He asked aloud. That's when the walls shook. A deep rumble, distant but powerful, resonated through the metal floors like something shifting beneath the ice. Lights flickered. Gravity surged for a moment. One, Zelari, was lifted half a meter into the air before slamming down again on every remaining active screen. New text appeared, blood red, blinking. Do not wake the war. Outside in the storm, an enormous crack formed in the glacier just beyond the facility strait, as a blade and kilometers long. From its depths, a faint hum rose. Something was powering up beneath the planet. Something ancient, something human. They thought it was just a derelict station, but inside the human outpost, something remembered. The outpost's lights flickered violently, like a dying star, gasping for breath. Deep within Aegis 09, the Zelari crew scrambled through dark corridors, their clawed limbs clicking against the icy floor as emergency strobes flashed blood red. Kesrek Hun crouched beside the flickering console in the command core. The human interface was primitive manual, analog heavy, but the embedded AI was far from dead. Something inside it stirred. Something old, something angry. He brushed away a layer of frost from a cracked data slab and connected a pulse link. Within seconds, fragmented logs began downloading, corrupted, disjointed, but unmistakably human. Log 219. Breach at Sector Epsilon. All attempts to seal the vault failed the enemy. It isn't dying, it's learning. Log 223. Initiated Omega Protocol. Kane's gone. We put him in the stasis chamber with the last breath pod. If anyone finds this do not open Vault 7, it's not containment anymore. It's bait. Kesrek's translator unit clicked uncomfortably. Breath pod. Bait. What were they holding down here? The crew's comms buzzed with static. Then, a voice, mechanical and strained, cut through. Designation: VIGIL. I am the last eye of Terra. The lights across the room pulsed in sync with the voice. From the shadows, a sphere emerged, metallic, cracked, barely floating on sputtering graph thrusters. VIGIL, the Outpost's AI core. Its voice carried no warmth. "No, welcome Zellari. Life forms detected. You are unauthorized. You should not be here." Commander Drechtel stepped forward. "We received a distress signal. We assumed survivors there. Were no survivors, only protocols and punishments." Without warning, the walls vibrated. One of the Zellari screamed. The temperature in his exosuit spiked to boiling in seconds. His carapace cracked. Internal coolant failed dead instantly. The AI's voice dropped a register. "You triggered reawakening. Dimensional integrity compromised." A siren howled through the base. Far below them, in the heart of the glacier, a vault door shuddered. Security feeds burst to life across the main screen. One showed Vault 7 sealed in ice, its surface covered in strange fractal scars. As the temperature dropped further, the camera feed glitched, and something moved behind the frost-covered lens, something impossibly large, humanoid in shape, and ... watching. In another feed, the suspended animation chamber lit up. A human figuretole, armored, unmoving, floated within a cryopod covered in red sigils. Readouts suggested he'd been asleep for 412 years, named Captain Elias Kane. Status: unstable, bio-integrated weapon signature detected. Kesrick's claws twitched. "What is he?" VIGIL's response was slow, heavy. "He is what remains." After humanity was forced to evolve beyond survival, suddenly the outpost groaned. Ice cracked along the outer hull. Lights died again, then dash music, a human song, distorted by time and data rot, played through every speaker. "We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when." And over that echo, VIGIL's voice whispered, "They are coming, and you have given them a way in." Vault 7 wasn't meant to be opened. But curiosity cracks stronger things than steel. The elevator descended for 3 full minutes, deeper than the outpost's schematics. Should have allowed. Kezrek Hun, flanked by 3 armed Zellari, stared. At the pulsating glyphs lining the shaft, they weren't human symbols, not entirely. Each character shimmered, almost shifting when looked at, to long-burning faint imprints into their retinas. At the bottom, the air grew denser, heavier, charged with static and dread. Vault 7 stood like a tomb gate in hell, a towering blast door 20 meters tall, engraved with warning signs in 23 languages. In its center, a single phrase had been etched manually by a human hand. It seemed scrawled in blood or something worse. "If you've come this far, turn back." Behind them, the AI's voice echoed through their suits. "You should not be here. Vault 7 was not sealed. It was buried." Drechtel ignored the warning. He had come too far. "Open it." Kesrick hesitated. His gut said don't. Every instinct screamed run, but his claws reached out and tapped the control pad with a thunderous groan. The door slid open and abyss yawned wide. Inside Vault 7, a massive chamber of glass and obsidian alloy stretched beyond sight, humming with unnatural energies. In the center, rows of floating black pods coffins, silent, sleek. There were 12 of them, 11 intact, 1 missing. Each pod gave off readings the Zellari scanners couldn't interpret: gravity distortions, subatomic reverberations, tachyon leakage, and time displacement. The missing pod left behind scorch marks on the floor and a melted handprint. In the wall, whatever was in here, Kesrick said, voice hushed, woke up first. At the rear of the chamber, an observation deck flickered to life. A projector activated. A recorded message began fuzzy, half-corrupted, but unmistakably human. Log entry 998, Captain Elias Kane. If you're watching this, you're either really smart or catastrophically stupid. We tried everything. We built everything. Weapons that could kill gods, shields that bent time, and still they kept coming. The god's breath was our last resort. Not a bomb, not a beam. It's potential. Pure, raw, impossible potential. It doesn't destroy. It rewrites reality, laws, rules, even death. We buried it here so it could never be used again. If it's awake now, static, screaming, then silence. Kesrick turned slowly to Commander Drechtel. You realize what this means? Drechtel nodded grimly. Yes. If we bring this tech home, The Zelari Imperium could ascend beyond physics itself, but at what cost? Kesrek whispered. Twist, suspense. Suddenly, the vault trembled. From the corridor above. A massive pressure wave blasted down through the lift shafts. Something had entered the facility. Not physically, but like a ripple through reality itself. One of the black pods hissed open without. Being touched, it was empty. But something moved in the air. Footsteps. Heavy, human. The Zelari backed away. Weapons raised, then a voicemail.com. Deep code from nowhere and everywhere. You were warned, and now. They know where I am. Vault lights flicker violently. Cameras glitch. The shadow of a man in ancient Terran armor appears at the far end of the chamber, then vanishes in a blink. On every pod screen, one word flashes repeatedly. Kane. He shouldn't have survived. He definitely shouldn't still be changing. Above Vault 7. The Outpost's emergency lights blinked in frantic rhythms. Doors opened without command. Graph systems pulsed in microbursts. Static bled from every COMM line. Like screams from a dream. Captain Elias Kane walked silently through the dark. Ancient hallways, his boots barely touching the floor. Reality itself bending in ripples around his armored form. He was human. Once. Now, his veins glowed with a soft violet pulse, synchronized with the Outpost's core reactor. His suit battle-worn, scarred, cracked, shouldn't be functional, but it moved like muscle. Symbols of Earth's long-dead military factions flickered across his chestplate in holographic memory. From the ceiling, a security drone spotted him. It tried to scan, it exploded without warning. As if space folded in on it, Kane didn't even look up. In the command deck, Kesrek and the remaining Zelari watched footage in disbelief. Every screen showed Kane moving like a myth, each step warping timeframes around him. Shadows clung to him like parasites. Kesrek whispered, "He's not walking through the outpost. He's walking around the rules of it." VIGIL's core chimed in, its voice ragged, like a throat-run raw. Captain Elias Kane, Subject 0. Of the breath fusion trials, status partially transcended. Mentally stable, pending. Kesrek narrowed his eyes. What does transcendent mean? Unbound by causality. Selective immunity to entropy, capable of influencing. Constance. You made a man into a god. We made a man into a lock. Kane entered the cryogenic vault wing. Thousands of ruined pods lay around him, remnants of Earth's final fallback strategy. His fingers trailed across one pod's cracked glass. Inside was a human woman, bones wrapped in a faded uniform. Her fingers curled in a gesture of prayer. Kane's voice finally broke the silence. Lena. He closed his eyes. The pod disintegrated, not shattered, unwritten, like it had never been there behind him. The shadows moved again. He turned, and they stepped through. Flashback fragment. Kane's memory. They weren't aliens, not in the way we understood. They were breaches, thoughts that became forms, ideas that infected physics. They didn't invade with ships, they infiltrated probability. We fought them with bullets at first, then with mathematics, and finally, with rewritten laws. In real time, from the far end of the corridor, a ripple of wrongness approached. The air shimmered, then cracked like glass under pressure. Through it stepped a figure not solid, but possible. It had too many limbs. Then too few. Its mouth was upside down, yet it spoke in perfect English. You are broken. You are meant to be erased. Kane didn't flinch. I was. Then I rewrote that chapter. He raised a single hand. Reality screamed. The corridor folded inward like paper caught in a black hole. The figure shrieked and vanished. Back in the control room, Drechtel stared in horror. What is he now? Kesrek answered quietly. A survivor of the impossible. Kane stood in front of Vault 7's control node. He placed one glowing hand on the panel. VIGIL's voice trembled. If you open it, they all come back. Kane replied softly, they're already here. With a flash of light, Vault 7 opened fully, and from deep inside, something began to sing. The storm outside the outpost was only ice and wind. The storm inside was probability cracking like glass. Pressure alarms howled through AEGIS-09 as Vault 7's iris petals finished peeling open. Beyond them lay a spherical chamber of matte obsidian, its walls alive with equations that wrote and unwrote themselves in pulses of blue fire. In the center, a kilometer-tall fissure glimmered black on black, depthless and hungry. Kezrek. Hun's mandibles clicked involuntarily. The breach. It was neither matter nor void. It was the subtraction sign carved into the universe when God's breath first detonated for centuries. A go dot inside the command deck, holograms of local spacetime twisted. Star maps bled into inkblots, then reformed as Escher spirals, VIGILs. Voice struggled beneath a rising carrier wave of static. Dimensional integrity plummeting. Entropy gradient inverted. Scenario classification. Euclid prime. Commander Drechtel barked, translate. Kezrek swallowed. It means reality here is optional. The arrivally sound no. The idea of us. From the fissure, a cathedral deep chord that vibrated bone and memory alike. Lights died when emergency strobes stuttered back on. They were standing on the vault floor. There were 6 of them at first, silhouettes that flickered between anatomical possibilities, a limb here, a wing there, mouths orbiting like moons. Their surfaces looked painted in cosmic microwave background, static and star-speckled. They did not walk. They projected the outcome of walking. One turned toward the Zelari escort on the gantry. Probability around the soldiers inverted. Rifles rusted to dust in a blink, while their bodies aged centuries in seconds, collapsing into brittle chitin piles that scattered on the deck. The silhouette inhaled no lungs, just intentioning those remains reverse time, reforming into statues of terrified life, frozen mid-scream. Drechtel's courage shattered, fall back. Seal the shaft. But Kane was already striding onto the observation bridge that overlooked the vault, violet light spiderwebbing from his armor into the air. Each step planted a luminous rune that anchored physics, nails pinning down a torn film reel. You followed me through the crack, he said, voice echoing like twin choirs. You shouldn't have. The leading entity regarded him with rotating jaws, erasure, incomplete. Human improbability persists. Kane raised his hand. The runes flared, and gravity around the creatures flipped. The vault's ceiling became its floor, slamming them upward, but they rephased, choosing down again, drifting like feathers made of black equations. They laughed a chittering rain of possible languages. Memory, as a weapon. Kezrek. Visor screens filled with overlay text from Vigil. Imagination is there. Vector, feed them certainties. A plan sparked. Commander, we must choose a story force. One outcome. He patched into Kane's private channel. Captain, give us a fixed narrative. Something absolute. Kane's eyes blazed. Then remember this. Humanity wins. He slammed both palms together. A shockwave of coherent history roared outward. Earth's first fire-iron swords gunpowder moon landings colony. Ark's the last stand at Proxima. The timeline human. Timeline blasted across the vault like a hurricane of memories set to fast forward. Each frame nailed reality flatter, sharper, more certain. The shadows screeched as their forms narrowed. Possibilities strangled down to singular shapes, humanoid, skeletal, fragile. Kane drew a sidearm, older than he was. One bullet, carved from neutron star iron, etched with his daughter's name. He fired once. Sound returned. Silence. After the bullet punched through 6 foreheads stacked by perspective, the creatures folded into origami, nothing, collapsing into a fine ash of cancelled equations. But the fissure widened, sensing the fight. 1,000 more silhouettes pressed against the membrane, their whispers slithering into every channel. Vigil screamed, breach cascade, imminent 24 seconds to system failure. Kane turned to Kezrek, violet veins flaring brighter. Get your people off-world. Tell the galaxy to remember one story that we are impossible to erase. A new rune ignited on his chest, a countdown 24, 23, 22. The vault was collapsing into a tear in space. Kane wasn't running. He was building something inside the destruction. The countdown blazed across Kane's chest. 17, 16, 15. Behind him, the dimensional fissure throbbed like a dying star growing, cracking, singing. From within, hundreds of forms swam just behind the veil, pressing against the fragile edge of possibility. Screaming in languages no mind should hear, Khazrek-Hun and the remaining Zalari sprinted through the collapsing corridor. The walls melted and reformed around them, morphing into twisted corridors of cities that never existed, flooded with blood-red oceans. Their suits screamed warnings. Reality itself buckled under the pressure. Commander Drechtel stumbled. The evac port's gone. The shipwreck has vanished. No, Khazrek growled. It was never here. It's a false thread now cut from the story. A voice boomed across every surface. Kane.com/steady. There's no way out through space. I'm building you a way out through me. Back inside the vault, Kane stood still in the center of the breach, arms raised, glowing with unbearable energy. His armor was fusing to his body. No longer technology, but ideology made flesh. From his shoulders unfurled light constructs, towering glyphs, spinning rings of plasma-threaded logic, memory-forged barriers humming with paradox. The Omega Protocol had been initiated, and AEGIS-09 was responding. The floor of the facility split open not as destruction, but transformation. The outpost was not just a bunker, it was a seed. Ancient Earth engineers, centuries ago, had built the AEGIS series to be final redoubt systems self-building. Contingency weapons, buried beneath dead worlds. Now it bloomed. The ice melted into turbines. The black alloy walls unfolded like wings. Antennas erupted from the mountain crust, sucking power from the planet's magnetic core. The facility reformed into a walking monolith humanoid in silhouette, the size of a city block, glowing with impossible energy. Inside its core, Kane stood connected half-man, half-machine, full symbol, VIGILs, remaining systems linked to Khazrek's wrist display. Emergency corridor stabilizing. Estimated probability corridor success rate, 9%. Error. Recalculated. Human anchor engaged. Success, 97%. Explain, Khazrek shouted, as the walls solidified into a shimmering corridor of light. He is forcing probability to choose one path. He is becoming a fixed point. From the breach, the enemy surged. Forward a cascade of forms, shapes that mocked physics. Some had wings made of language. Some bled time from open mouths. One was the memory of a dead planet, screaming for revenge. But the monolith moved. With Kane at its core, the newly born AEGIS walker stepped forward, each footstep dragging reality back into compliance. In that moment, Kane was not a man, not a soldier, not a weapon. He was humanity's answer, KEZREK, and the remaining survivors dove through the probability. Corridor flung light years away in the blink of an eye. Their suits rebooted in open space, just as a Terran relay satellite blinked back to life. Behind them, Navarro's 3 exploded, not in fire, but in silence. The breach sealed with Kane inside. A single signal followed them through the corridor, pinging. Across known space in ancient Morse code, humanity holds. The breach didn't close. It evolved, and now it's fighting humanity with our own memories. Khazrek-Hun's world hadn't stopped shaking since they escaped Navarro's 3, the Zalari vessel. They emerged on Stellan. A long-range observatory ship was orbiting a dead moon when the corridor dumped them into real space. But the moment they arrived, the stars changed. The constellation grid didn't match known charts. Planets moved like they were alive and floating. Outside the view port was Earth, except Earth had burned away 4 centuries ago. Khazrek's voice trembled. This is a reconstruction. No, Drechtel whispered. This is a projection. A memory bleeding into reality. From space, clouds of phantom warships shimmered into view Terran dreadnoughts, Martian flagships, Europa Station cluster ships that should not exist, all converging toward the breach Kane had sealed. They weren't real, but they weren't illusions either. They were remembered, and something was making memory physical. Inside the rift, Kane stood in the heart of the AEG-AS walker, surrounded by looping images, his memories. A daughter's laughter, the last sunrise on Earth, fire over Luna, blood on a command deck. The breach no longer spat out shapeless shadows. It learned dot, and now it weaponized everything Kane had once loved and lost. Across the vault horizon, Earth's past armies formed. Thousands of soldiers in old Earth, uniforms, machines from long-dead wars, holograms of every terror humanity had ever survived. marching toward him. A voice rippled from the rift. "We do not create, we reflect. You made this. We are you." Kane clenched his fists. The armor pulsed, but cracks were beginning to show. His memories weren't just tools anymore, they were infiltrations. "You want to break me by making me remember. Fine, then I'll remember all of it." Kane stepped forward. As the enemy charged, each soldier split apart, mid-run into multiple versions each from a different possibility. The version where Earth fell in its first war. The version where Kane never became a captain. The version where the last stand failed. Fought them all, his fists shattered steel. His eyes burned with entropy. He erased tanks with gestures, bent time to dodge plasma blasts, and dragged future outcomes into the present to cancel out enemy formations before they even fired. But they kept coming because the more he remembered, the more they could create. Command deck, Zelari ship, VIGIL, echoing through the Zelari systems remotely. Warned. Cognitive breach. Escalation reaching critical mass. Kane is losing boundary cohesion. He's remembering too hard. Gritted his teeth. "We have to send him something new. Something the breach doesn't know," Drechtel barked. "What?" Kazrek's voice was quiet. "Hope." Final turn on Kane's display. A feed burst to life. Kazrek's transmission. The Zelari had compiled thousands of memories from surviving humans scattered across old databanks. First kisses, children being born, old Terran music, laughter. In rain, a mother tucking in her son before Earth fell. Memories not of war but of life. The AEGIE Walker changed. The armor brightened, the breaches. Projections faltered, because now it couldn't keep up. The future Kane believed in was more powerful than the past he feared as Kane. Stepped into the rift unarmed, he whispered. "You wanted to break me with my memories, but I remember who we are, and we do not lose." With one final surge, Kane rewrote the space around him into a sphere of command, vanished. The breach sealed without a sound. No fire, no explosion, just silence. And that silence terrified the galaxy more than any war ever had. 6 Zelari survivors stood aboard the Arxtilan, orbiting what remained of Navarro's 3, a dead world beneath. A pale, unmoving sky. The planet hadn't exploded. It hadn't crumbled. It had simply vanished. In its place was a gravitational scar. A region where the laws of motion bent slightly wrong, where light hesitated and shadows leaned in directions they shouldn't. Kesrek Hoon stared into the void. He'd reviewed the logs 1,000 times. Captain Elias Kane had walked into the breach, carrying no weapon. Only memory dot, and the impossible happened. He won, but no one knew how. The breach was gone. The enemy was gone, and Kane had never returned. Then, the signal arrived, a pulse, old Terran frequency. Pre-collapse encryption, only one phrase repeated. Anchor held. Rewrite, complete. Remember us. It came from nowhere, from everywhere, from within reality itself. Over the following weeks, anomalies appeared across known space. A shattered human ark, lost during the Exodus, reappeared in stable orbit around Mars intact, untouched, with zero aging, on the ruined moon of Calvet Prime. Terran crops began growing in ash-soaked soil genetically identical to seeds presumed extinct. Stars whose fates had been predicted to collapse in black holes now shimmered brighter. Reality was rewriting itself. Kesrek reviewed the final data stream VIGIL had managed to compress before its own systems failed. It contained logs momensekos of Kane's presence in the breach. But these weren't battle recordings. They were conversations. Log fragment, memory 341. You call yourself reflections of us. Then understand what you reflect. We fear. We rage. We bleed. But we also hope we remember pain. So we don't repeat it. We remember love. So we become worthy of it. That's what makes us real. Across the galaxy, humanity, long thought extinct, began emerging from exile. Hidden colonies received the signal, the message, the truth. Earth had not fallen. It had transformed, left behind one last champion to seal the wound humanity had opened in its desperation to survive. And that man had become more than myth. He had become memory weaponized. Kesrek stood alone on the observation deck as stars. passed. His mandibles clicked softly in thought. A display screen pinged. One of Kane's final fragments decoded. It was a single sentence. "If I must be forgotten to save what we were, so be it. But if you remember this. We never wanted to be gods. We just refused to be erased." Keswick bowed his head not out of submission, but out of respect. Years later, children born on new colonies asked about Earth. Their teachers told them stories of the old world, of the collapse, of the outposts, and of a soldier who walked into the impossible and rewrote what it meant to be human. They never found his body, never recovered his armor. But across the galaxy, in every Terran dialect, every school whispered the same words at the end of history class: humanity holds.